Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our editorial board meeting. And it's so good to see you all in person. It's been such a long time. And for those who joined us by Zoom, thank you very much for the extra effort to join us. It's greatly appreciated. John will be available to look through the chat if you have any comments, or please feel free just to join in the dialogue. So I'd like to introduce Ben Bishop. Ben is the executive editor at Springer Nature, and he's joining us from London this afternoon. And when Ben speaks, he will tell a little bit more about himself, his expertise, and the role he plays at Springer. But I'd like to just start the meeting by stating it's just been such a pleasure, Ben, to work together, and I greatly appreciate your support and your insight and just your commitment to the journal and some of the really novel ideas you have to move our journal forward and keep it vibrant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we start, I'd like to remember Paula Nelson Martin. And I think everybody on Zoom and in the room know Paula. And she was a friend to many of us. Paula passed away on September 8th of this year, and only a few months after the passing of our beloved son, Samuel. Paula was a nurse for over 50 years, and she received her PhD in 1988, and reflecting her passion in studying hope and oncology, the topic of her thesis was Hope and Health, Perspectives from Patients with Cancer and Well Adults. Paula was a mentor to many. She provided compassionate care at both an oncology nurse and a clinical nurse scientist. Paula was very active in AACE, and I have such fond memories of meeting her many, many years ago when I first started coming to the meeting and her welcoming all new members. And she's been very active on the editorial board and was reviewing up to about maybe about a year and a half ago. Paula's kindness extends beyond the workplace. She has been known to bring fresh bread to her elderly neighbor. She has sponsored children from Africa, and she also was very active in her global mission committee at her church. The journal will be donating to the National Hospice and Palliative Care Nursing Foundation in her honor. So I just want to take a moment and share a reflection on Paula's life and what she meant to us as a colleague and friend. Okay. We have two new editorial board members this year. Michelle Williams. Michelle will be the new AACE president in just a couple of hours. She's assistant professor at George Mason University. And Nathan Vanderver. And Nathan is the director of the Appalachian Career Training Program. And he is the assistant professor in the Department of Toxicology and Cancer Biology. I extend a welcome to both Nathan and Michelle if they're listening or get this recording in the future, but having their insight into healthcare disparities and the needs in the Appalachian area will add to the depth of our journal. So I'm so grateful they agreed to join us. Not to mention they've been very supportive of the journal and just really write excellent reviews that have really benefited our authors. So not only am I very grateful for all the work you do for the journal and how you've supported me, but so have our authors. And I get many kind notes throughout the year. And I wanted to share two with you, just as a reminder of why we do what we do. The first is from an author that wrote a paper about the New York Fire Department and implications for cancer education. And she writes, I have had a student, a faculty, and a nurse who were working with the New York Firefighter Department on a huge project seek me out as an expert because they located my manuscript online. And I think that's one of the things that drive us to be part of this journal, is getting out good information to as many people as we can. Second note came from a division chair at one of our universities in the country. And she said, "Thank you for this notification and for having this reflection section as part of the Journal of Cancer Education. This is very meaningful for me, and I'm most grateful to have this piece published in this specific journal with best wishes." So I just want to share how much you're all appreciated. So I'd like to hand this portion of the meeting over to Ben. And Ben has a series of slides. And Ben, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment before you present your slides, just telling us a little bit about yourself, I think we'd all be of great interest. Thank you so much, Ben. I'll have you just take over from here.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, so my name's Ben Bishop. I'm based at Springer Nature's London office. I've been with the company for 11 years. 9 of those have been working on journals. My team are responsible for the oncology portfolio. So we have 26 journals handled by myself and my 4 colleagues. And I guess it was maybe April or May that I started working on Journal of Cancer Education. And it's very different to the other journals that we have in the list. So it's been an exciting first few months, and I'm really keen to see how I can support Maria and the rest of the team in helping to develop the journal, because I think what this journal offers to the community, it's a lot. It has a very strong place and is of high value to those that work in this area. So very excited to be speaking to you today. And my slides really just are there to, I guess, provide a quick overview on the health of the journal and see if they can help to direct any of the conversations that you wish to have afterwards. So if we could move on to the first slide, please. So this provides a quick overview of the number of submissions that the journal has received over the past few years. And the bar trend here is quite similar to many of the other oncology journals within my team. So during 2020, the first year of many of the lockdowns, I think it gave a lot of people the opportunity to finish off some of the papers that they'd partially finished or had already started. And so many journals saw a big spike in submissions in 2020. Many journals also saw that continue into 2021. And you can see here we kind of reverted back to 2019's performance. And this year we are seeing a slight dip in submissions. But again, I think that's primarily due to much of the research that people want to do. They've only just been able to start getting back out there and get that started. So I do expect us to see these submission numbers kind of ramp back up to where they have been in the past, probably by the start of next year or the middle of next year at the latest. The orange line across the graph there, that shows our acceptance rate year on year. And I think one of the things to highlight here in the most 2 recent years is the journal has become a bit more selective, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think Maria's doing a really good job of making sure that what is being submitted to the journal is within the journal's scope. This journal is focused on cancer education. It's not focused on basic science or any kind of mRNA study. So and we do receive those papers. So there are authors that maybe don't pay as much attention to the journal scope as they should. So again, I think whilst it is lowering, I don't think there's any cause for concern there at all. And if anyone has any questions, please do pipe up as I'm speaking. But I think I'm ready for the next slide. So just reflecting on where the submissions are coming from. So on the left-hand side there, you can see a pie chart showing the geography of the submissions. I think it's no surprise that the US is the largest contributor to the journal in terms of submissions, obviously with our affiliation with AACE and just where the majority of the work is being performed. China comes in second place and Turkey in third. But we do have a big chunk of, and you can see the list at the bottom on the left-hand side there. We are receiving submissions from a vast number of locations throughout the world. And I think that's a great reflection on the journal. You know, this journal is being read globally, and it obviously has an attraction to a global audience in terms of authorship as well. On the right-hand side, this shows where the accepted papers are from. And you can see here there is a vast difference in the fate of those submissions from many locations. So whilst around 30% of our submissions are from the US, it's around 70% of our accepted and published papers. And I think this is again a reflection of maybe where the quality of the research is at the moment. I think we will see the domination of the US start to lower as the years go by, just because other locations will pick up and will know exactly what journals are looking for and what editors are looking for in the content that is submitted to those journals. Next slide, please. So this provides a quick summary of the peer review performance at the journal. And I think one of the key metrics that authors and the publishing field in general tend to focus on is what is the turnaround time from when I submit a manuscript to when I receive that first decision. The very top line here is that time from submission to first decision, and you can see it does vary throughout the years, but in 2022 it's really become quite short, which is a very good thing. Having spoken to Maria, I think this is primarily due to Maria doing a very good job on making sure that submissions that come in, if they're not within the scope of the journal, Maria is providing the authors with a very quick decision of reject, quite often a reject, and the offer to transfer to another Springer Nature journal. So for those of you that may be not aware, we do offer a transfer service at Springer Nature. So the authors can select one of the other journals within our stable of journals, and we will automatically transfer the manuscript and any kind of supporting information on their behalf. It saves them a lot of time, and it leaves a more favorable impression of the journal that has made that reject decision than if they had just simply rejected and let the authors go elsewhere without any further assistance. I think the other line that I wanted to highlight here is it's the second one down, slightly darker, and it remains quite consistent throughout. So this is days to complete the review from the reviewers. So our reviewer performance has remained quite stable. What I've noticed across this journal and others within, I'd say, the last 18 months is it's becoming much harder to find willing reviewers. I think people's time is or people are being pulled in many different directions with many different commitments. And so it is becoming more of a struggle for our editors to find willing reviewers. And I think we will just need to kind of adjust our practices to accommodate for that. So whereas in the past, maybe editors would have invited 3 reviewers in the hopes of finding 2 willing reviewers, that might now need to become 5 or 6 reviewers initially, just knowing that 3 or 4 are likely to say, sorry, I don't have the time available at the moment. But yeah, the overall message from here is that the journal is providing a very quick and thorough service to the authors, and I think it's a really key takeaway here. Next slide, please. So one of the key journal level metrics that, as a publisher, we're keen to monitor, and also I think is a good reflection of the quality of a journal and how well it's being received within the community, is article usage. So the number of downloads that the publications are receiving. You can see the individual month tallies there, but on the right-hand side, you get the yearly totals. And you can see that there's been a really healthy increase year on year of how many times the journal's articles have been downloaded. So last year we saw 328,000 downloads. This year we're at 251, and this data was from the end of August. So by the end of 2022, we're hoping to see a 14% increase on last year's performance. So again, the right content is being submitted to the journal, the right content is passing the peer review process and is being published, and it's clearly being very well received by those that read our journal. Next slide, please. So another really key metric at the journal level is the impact factor. And the importance of this will vary by location. But whilst it has its downsides, it is still probably the most well-known journal level metric to judge a journal by. So the darker bars on the screen here show the impact factor throughout the years. Our most recent impact factor that came out in June is 1.771, which was a slight reduction from the impact factor from the previous summer, but there is a very good reason for that. The calculation method used for the 2020 impact factor was a one-off. It was a transition calculation method, which saw the vast majority of journals see an inflated impact factor for that year alone. So I think the fairest thing to compare our latest impact factor with would be 2019, and you can see there we've jumped from roughly 1.6 to 1.8. So again, a good improvement there. This may be repeating very basic information for many of you, but the calculation method used is the total number of citations received during a one-year period to the papers that published in the 2 years prior. And you divide that total number of citations by the number of citable items that published in that 2-year period. Citable items is a very funny term because you can cite any type of content published in the journal, but what this is trying to refer to is original research articles, review articles, or brief communications. It doesn't include any kind of editorial material, any letters to the editors, any kind of book reviews or obituaries. So whilst those items can be cited, and those citations do count towards the impact factor, the number of those items that you do publish does not count towards the denominator. So I think that it's just an important thing to note, because I wouldn't want the journal or the editors of the journal to be reluctant to consider certain article types because they weren't sure it was going to be cited too many times. As long as they are classed as that editorial material, it doesn't actually matter, or it doesn't count negatively towards the journal if it doesn't get cited. Next slide, please, Maria. Okay, this is just a very quick summary of some of the small adjustments that we've made over the past few months. Really just trying to, I guess, tidy house. So we made a very small adjustment to the aims and scope. We've highlighted that healthcare disparities are one of the many topics that we're very interested in receiving submissions on, and we removed some of the duplicated information. We adjusted the journal homepage, which you can see a quick screenshot there on the right-hand side, to make the first thing that visitors see a "Why Publish With Us" section. So we've tried to highlight some of the unique selling points of the journal. I've seen this be very successful at some of my other journals, and I think, again, given people's limited time, if we can really flag our key selling points straight from the off, that will hopefully attract more authors and get more people submitting to the journal. We adjusted our submission guidelines to very clearly state what types of articles and types of papers we're looking for, and also what the formatting guidelines for those are. I'm not an author myself. I imagine it's quite frustrating going to submit to a journal, wanting to know what the word limit is or how many figures you can include, and not having that information to hand. So we've made that very clear for authors to find. And lastly, we've adjusted the amount of time that we provide authors with when they are asked to revise their manuscripts. So it was quite a long time, half a year, to adjust their manuscripts, and many authors were submitting their revisions way before this. But our automated system reminders are based around that deadline, so they weren't actually being reminded, we're expecting your revision. So we've adjusted this to a shorter time. We never hold an author to this. If they are slightly overdue, we won't say you can never come back. We'll adjust the deadlines accordingly. But it does just mean that now some gentle reminders are sent out to the authors, just saying, it's your revision's due in a couple of weeks' time. Here's a quick link to our guidance if you need any support, or if you need to contact us for any questions. So we're hoping that will help to make life a bit easier for authors as well. Next slide. So this is the topic of collections is something that I think might be relatively new to the journal, but it's something we've been trying to do across many of our journals in the past few years. They're there really to kind of group related content together. So that if a reader stumbles upon one paper that they find interesting and that paper happens to be in a collection, it's made very apparent to the reader that there is related content and they may wish to also go and view that material. And they're also really good for grouping commissioned content together. So, if you have a thematic topic that you think would be suitable to commission 10, 15 papers on, this is a really good way of grouping that material together. And I think Maria will speak towards the topical collection that we have in mind just in a second. To start with, I wanted to just touch on the idea or the concept of emerging leaders. So the idea behind this is that there are many working within the field that are still within the infancy of their career, but they have already shown themselves to be kind of high flyers and made really big contributions to the area. And we want to recognize these people. We want to, award them for what they've already done within their first few years. So we have asked, or we will be asking the editorial board to recommend those within, say, the first 10 years of their career who we could acknowledge as emerging leaders. And those authors will be invited to submit their next paper to the journal. And at the end of the paper, we'll actually include their, a short biography on the author and just acknowledge the fact they have been labeled as an emerging leader within the field. So we're hoping it's going to be really well received by those that we identify. And it obviously has the benefit of bringing some of that really good research to the journal. I think the long-term idea is that we'll build a good relationship between those authors and the journal. And so, the next time that they have a paper, whether it's a year or two from now, they'll also consider our journal to publish that material. Maria, did you want to speak towards the topical collection that we're working on now?
Thank you, Ben. Just a few words. Dr. Margaret Briel and I would like to sponsor a topical collection, actually just addressing how cancer education has empowered Indigenous populations. Dr. Briel is very involved at our university in working towards cancer education with our Native American tribes throughout the country. So our goal is to identify leaders in Indigenous cancer education and have them branch out to their network of colleagues and invite them to submit manuscripts. And I know I've reached out to several of you already, and I'm preparing a letter. Margaret and I are preparing a letter to send to you all. We've already, Georgia, you mentioned a colleague in Guam. Darren, I know I spoke with you about Australia, New Zealand. Art, you and I have spoken about the work that you've done, and we're reaching out to as many Indigenous populations as we can. The real benefit of this is that when a person looks at one of the manuscripts coming from this topical collection, it will automatically bring up all the other manuscripts that are included in this collection. So it makes it easier for the readers to have access to all this content in our journal. So Margaret and I are sending out personal letters, and then Ben and Springer will send out a formal letter for both collections. Thank you. Ben, I think you wanted, I think there's, yeah.
Yeah, there's just a couple more slides. So this is on the topic of open access, and I appreciate that open access has more prevalence in certain locations of the world than others, but I wanted to just give a brief update on where we are as a publishing company and also as a journal. So the first thing to highlight is that Journal of Cancer Education is what we call a transformative journal. This means that authors can still publish via the subscription route if they so wish, or they can elect to publish open access. And there's a couple of options if they choose to publish open access. They can either cover the APC themselves, usually this is some money left over in the research fund, or they may actually qualify for the fees to be covered by an agreement between Springer Nature and their institution. There's 23 locations or institutions listed at the bottom of the screen there. So we have agreements in place with these, the consortia or the institutions listed here. And as long as the author of the paper, sorry, the corresponding author of the paper is from one of these locations or institutions, they will actually be able to publish open access at no charge to the authors. So this is helping that migration from traditional subscription journals towards fully open access journals. So we're kind of towards the infancy of that journey, but these are the kind of methods that we're using to try and help that journey. And in the top right hand corner there, you can see some of the key metrics for why people might want to publish open access. So if you take two very comparable papers, same authors, same topic, and publish them in the same journal, the paper that's published open access will be cited 1.6 times as often and downloaded 4 times as often. So it does increase dissemination and it does increase the number of citations that the paper receives, which is obviously beneficial to the authors themselves, but also to the journal. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Maria. I do apologize for how text heavy this one is, and it's probably worth reading in your own time, but I just want to flag some of the key, I guess, background to why we're making this transition. So there is a big push towards moving journals and research publishing towards open access within Europe primarily. So many European funders have come together and they sit as a group called Coalition S, and Plan S is their concept towards helping drive towards open access. What this means is that journals need to show an increase in the percentage of content they publish open access year on year, with an eventual aim to move the journal fully open access once 75% of that content is open access. At the very bottom of the screen there, you can see the numbers specific to our journal. So we're still in the infancy. So in 2020, just 11% of our research articles were open access. In 2021, we were given a target by Plan S to have 16% of content open access, and we met that target by publishing 17%. And this year, we will need to see 22% of our research content publish open access. And from that long list of institutions and locations from the previous slide, we are trying to add more and more locations as and when contracts are up for renewal to help with this migration. So, every year we try and get at least 2 or 3 new locations added, and that will just naturally help with our move towards this migration and with our attempts at reaching the targets that the coalition set us. I think we can move to the next slide. Yeah, and so I think that's
Ben, quick question. This is John Vetto.
Sure.
Can you remind us the financial implications to the association and the journal of going open access? We talked about this at the last meeting, but can you just remind us what those are?
Yes,
or negative?
Yeah, at the moment, the agreement between Springer Nature and the society is primarily, I don't know if this is the right term, but it's a flat fee. So there's a guaranteed payment to the society, and it would not necessarily move in accordance with the migration from subscription to open access. And what the kind of open access rates that journals are charging is kind of calculated backwards from how much money we were receiving from the subscription content. I think historically it was around $3,000 or 3,000 euros. That is roughly where the open access charge sits as well. So for good or bad, publishing companies have tried to, with this migration, have tried to make sure that there is no negative implications to journal finances, which is obviously, speaking as a publisher, probably quite greedy, but for our societies, it's trying to protect their revenue sources as well. So I don't think there will be any negative implication towards the journal finances or the society. What it does mean is that we're quite reliant on the number of the papers that the journal publishes, because once you go to a fee per paper, the more papers you publish, obviously the revenue will naturally increase. So that may be something that we need to look at in the future. And I think that is possibly where these commissioned collections or invited contributions will come into play. You know, at the moment, we still offer that subscription route, so we would never be charging a fee to the invited authors. But if the invited authors are actually from a location where the open access fee is covered by an agreement between Springer Nature and the institution, those authors would actually benefit by being able to publish open access at no cost to them, and the journal benefits as well.
At this time, we can certainly open up the whole forum for questions. Thank you, Ben. I know your intention was to leave time for questions. Can you stay with us for the remainder of the meeting?
Of course, yeah, I'll be here for the rest of the meeting.
Wonderful. So at this time, why don't we open up for questions? I know there's a lot to discuss.
Well, you know,
Gilad?
Gilad, yeah, I'm from Israel currently, and I'm really worried about the open access because actually I think it will widen the disparity between US, Canada, and the rest of the world, especially developing countries. Because in many places, you know, they won't pay $3,000. It's a lot of money in Africa, Far East, Middle East, you know, and a lot of academic institutions will not pay for it. And then what we might see in a few years is that even the numbers, the discrepancy will even, you know, widen. And we'll see a higher percentage of North American papers. You know, I'm a little bit worried. I think we should look into putting in a mechanism where people who declare that they cannot cover the expenses, or from developing countries who are going to have to, or deep discount, or be able to subsidize their, you know, their submission, especially if we go 100% and there's no other way.
Ben, could you speak to that for Gilad?
I can, yeah, that's a really good point. So to try and summarize where we are at the moment. So whilst the journal offers both the option to publish subscription and open access, at present there is no discount or waiver option on the open access because authors can still publish free of charge via the subscription route. Once a journal flips to become fully open access, and at one point Springer Nature was the largest publisher of open access, I think we've been surpassed the last year. Once a journal is fully open access, we do offer a discounted rate to lower income countries, and we also offer a route where if a group of authors can show that they do not have the funds available, we will be able to still publish their material free of charge, even though it is open access. So we have many hundreds of fully open access journals at Springer Nature, and that's the route they use at the moment. So whilst there is kind of an advertised fee, and we do hope to charge that fee from the majority of authors, if authors can show that they're from a low-income country or are financially, there is a financial hardship, we are still able to publish the material at no cost to the authors.
Georgia?
Ben, thank you. That was an awesomely good presentation. A couple of questions. The UCSD, where I am, UC California, I was told by the librarian who didn't, I think, fully understand the arrangement that we have with you. She said that depending on the journal, they paid a certain portion of it, but then the authors would be expected to pay the remainder if there were to be an additional charge. And that was not for editorial things. It just, she had the sense that it was a split fee.
Yeah, so I think it's quite a unique arrangement at University of California. So the first $1,000, I think, is always covered by the institution. And then the hope there is that the authors will have the rest of the money available from their research fund.
Ben, we have a fire notice. We have to leave the building right now.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll still be here when you're back.
Stay there, please.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm
gonna take the laptop, that laptop over there, and we can keep it with the laptop.
Okay.
We can keep the meeting with this. As long as we have one.
Oh, boy.
It's dramatic.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's time to leave. Have a good day.
Where are you?
I think I'm going to head back to my exam. It was good to see everyone.
Great to see you, Darren.
Bye, Darren.
Hopefully we'll see some of you in Poland in the end of April.
So this is Nacho. I'm taking the computer with the group. To outside so we can keep the meeting somehow.
Attention please, there has been a report of an emergency. Proceed calmly to the nearest exit and leave the building.
Has it been called off or?
I'm sorry?
Has it been called off?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I guess it's safe to return then. It's safe to return? Okay. All right. I guess it's safe to return. All clear? Okay. All right, folks. We've been given the all clear, so we're returning to the room. Here's Maria with us. Yeah, with floor.
Attention please, there has been a report of an emergency. Proceed calmly to the nearest exit and leave the building immediately. Do not use elevators, use stairwells where necessary. All handicapped occupants shall use the building evacuation.
Yes, even the live, a live feed of what we're going.
Yes, you know, we have a handicapped person, a walker. He's gonna be told, "We can't take him over there."
I think they said there's a handicap route for you.
Yeah, but they don't know it. Nobody tells you that.
So
Hi, everyone. We're back.
Crazy.
let's see.
Let's see.
I'm going to-
Hi, everybody on Zoom. Can you see us now?
We can. Yeah, we can. And we can hear
Great,
you.
great. Thank you.
Well, we had a little exercise, so thank you for waiting for us.
You
So
might want to shoot the camera a little more. to the-
you were going to tell us about how the arrangement works for the UCs.
Well, this is your view.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Can you still hear us?
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear us okay in the room?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, so the University of California deal is very unique. So as you mentioned, there is the option of splitting the APC under this agreement. So the first $1,000 would be covered by the institution. And then the authors are asked, do you have funds to cover the remainder? So if the authors do have any kind of research grant left, they can agree to cover the remaining monies. If there is no money available, then the request goes back to University of California. And as far as I'm aware, the vast majority of times they do agree to cover up the full APC. So as I say, it's quite unique. Any of the other agreements that were listed on the presentation, this split option is not available. So for those, the institution does simply cover the full APC under those agreements.
There's a question in the chat and from Dr. O'Donnell. Can you share with us the educational journals we compete with? And also which of those are in the Springer Nature portfolio?
I think the microphone's turned
I don't think we need to waste a lot of time, but I just saying for the long run, if we could send to the editorial board, who are our competitors and within within your portfolio, are there things that educational journals can learn from each other?
Yeah, I think within our oncology portfolio, this journal is very unique, but there are definitely topics where there might be some overlap. So yeah, it's definitely something for me to explore alongside Maria, and we can definitely involve the board as well.
It's Georgia Sadler with another question. I have a new research assistant who has struggled a lot with her new job, but one of her recent complaints was how hard it was to submit a journal article. Have we changed our website, or is it my challenged assistant?
Submitting to the Journal of Cancer Education in particular?
Yeah, she was saying how difficult it was putting all the information into the pages, and she had lots to complain, but she complains a lot. So I don't know if it's her or if there's something new on our journal, because you mentioned something earlier about some changes that were made. She was talking about the formatting of how she had to upload the article, then she had to go in and reformat it again. And I don't know if it's her.
So yeah, we have not changed the submission process. I mean, so the submission process at this journal is slightly different to many journals in that it's double blind peer review. So you know, authors need to separate the author information from the rest of the manuscript. So I don't know if that was maybe the back and forth that your research assistant would have had with the systems assistant that we have. That's quite possible, but yeah, there shouldn't have been any kind of major adjustment for anyone that's previously submitted.
That was my guess. It was my assistant and not the journal, but I just thought as long as we're on the phone, I should ask and come home with some compassion if I should. I won't.
I mean, whilst we're on the topic of submission systems, it's maybe a good time to bring up that Springer Nature has actually developed its own proprietary system. I think we have around 300 journals that are running on it at the moment. And that process that your assistant maybe struggled with the most, which was getting information from the manuscript into the system, on our new platform is handled automatically. So there's an AI that scrapes a manuscript, pulls out author information, title, abstract. You know, it saves authors a lot of time. We are not quite at the stage yet of moving this journal and other society-owned journals over. And I have to say that's probably for the best because there's a number of teething issues with the system. So whilst there are some benefits at the moment, the downsides are probably outweighing the benefits. But in, you know, maybe within the next 12 months, I think we may be looking at moving towards a new submission system, which by that time, I hope will offer many benefits to editors as well.
Great. Any other questions? Michelle? Michelle, I just want to recognize her. She will be our new president now that she's joined us in just a couple of hours, Michelle. So congratulations and welcome to the editorial board.
I think it's okay. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. So Ben, I just had a quick question. As we're transitioning eventually to being completely open access, is there, or are you planning to have a mechanism by which multiple authors could split the fee? Because I know, it might not have been JCE, but I know that some authors have had challenges when they do try to publish open access and try to split the fee among different authors.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we spoke maybe 5-10 minutes ago about the functionality that the University of California setup requires, where there is the potential to split the fee between the institution and the authors. I suspect that same technology can be used to split across many authors. I think at the moment it's a very DIY or manual process where we might be able to issue kind of a number of invoices rather than one invoice covering the full fee. We send out 3 or 4, however many is needed. But in the long run, I imagine that same technology will allow kind of a systems-based approach to, you know, for one author to cover the bulk, and then maybe a second and third to cover the remainder.
Does anybody on Zoom have a question? Georgia, nothing on chat. Good. Georgia has a question.
Yeah, I forgot my question.
Yeah.
I had such a hard time finding the microphone. What was I going to ask? Oh, it's about, no, that wasn't it. Let me just think for a second. They're on.
Sure.
The question.
I can ask.
Oh, I know what it was.
Yeah,
I know what it
go
was.
right ahead.
I was asking Maria as well as Ben, when you have the collections articles, are they published all together at the same time, or is it just a label that pulls together articles published over time?
Yes, Ben, I think I have this correct. They are published in real time. They would just be under the heading and they'll just be added as time goes by. So we're not going to go back to manuscripts that are already published, but they'll be published under the new heading and it will be added. Ben, do I have that correct?
You do, yeah. So I think one of the real struggles that in the past we've faced with organizing a special issue is that you have, say, 70% of the authors are really timely, submit on time when you've asked them, and the remaining 30% take another 3 or 4 months to submit their paper. And it feels really unfair on the first batch of authors to hold their material back. So what we do is we are publishing the collection items online as and when they're ready, and they will slot straight into the online collection. Now, in theory, we could hold all of the items back from the print issue until they're all available. But again, I guess it really depends on what kind of time frame there is from that first to final item. So it may be that they publish in separate issues, but the online arena is where most of our viewership is, or article downloads are, and that's where they'll all be collected in the same place and on the same collection page.
We do have a chat question.
Very good. Okay, yeah, it's on.
So Dr. O'Donnell asks, or says it might be worth a piece in the journal called A View from the Publisher to include some of this exciting information that you shared today, Ben. Is that something you could do? Is that not on it? All right, okay. So anyway, Dr. O'Donnell asks, it may be worth a piece in the journal called A View from the Publisher that includes some of the exciting information you shared. Is that something we could do, Ben?
I think it's encouraged that the publisher does not comment in the journal, but it's quite possible that if Maria wished to put out a reflection piece regurgitating some of the information I've shared today, that would be acceptable.
Yeah.
In other words, that would come from the editor and not from the publisher.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Joe,
Joe, is
if
that,
you think it meets, what you're looking for, I'd be happy to write an editorial about this.
Joe asked the second question that he wants to know if there's an update on our editor search.
It is opened, Michelle, up until, is it February 1? February 1. And then at that time, we'll have all of the applicants be reviewed. Is that correct? We're not reviewing them independently now, but we're just going to get the pool of applicants at one time. Yeah. Yeah. May I ask a question? I'd like your advice about this. We get a lot of manuscripts that are a needs assessment, knowledge gaps throughout the world. And if they address an interesting topic, something we haven't addressed in the past, some new topic, what I've been doing is I've been asking the authors to please resubmit their manuscript with a well-developed discussion about the implications of their findings for cancer education, for developing cancer education programs. And I actually get a fair amount back. I wanted to ask you, do you think that we need to consider expanding the topic of manuscripts that we'd like to see the journal published? We added education and healthcare disparities as it relates to cancer, but I was wondering if anybody had any thoughts of other topics we might like to add related to healthcare and cancer education that Ben and I could add in the directions for authors and the aims and scope. Maybe something to think about over time. Mhm.
Maybe you could tell us the topics. What are you using now?
It would be from the aims and scope page. It would really be about anything related to cancer education, whether it's assessment of attitudes, knowledge attainment, research methodology, and we extend to hospice and palliative care. I don't know if I'm missing much else. I'll have to go back to.
Yeah, we've talked about this briefly. Maria continues to be to receive a lot of manuscripts that are not on the surface appropriate for cancer education. Papers on basic science, papers on basic translational clinical science that don't have a cancer education scope. And what we've done, or what Maria's done a very good job of, is sending the better ones, the ones that might have a cancer education scope, and ask them to go back, maybe do a little work, maybe rewrite the discussion, maybe change the title to at least give the reader the implications for cancer education. Is that fair, Maria?
Yes.
And the
Yes.
question is, how can we put that in the scope, or do we need to put that in the scope? Oh,
Yeah.
that summarizes it?
Yeah,
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 okay.
thank you. So we don't send it back to the authors, that it's included in their original submission, because that delays their getting it published.
I would suggest another topic, which could be something like skills resources. Our psychology colleagues have trained me in all these amazing standardized paper and pencil instruments that we could be using to enrich our evaluation of our interventions. So it's not just, did it work or not, but what were the mediators and the modifiers of the outcomes?
Mhm.
I wonder if we could have just a heading that someone would be invited to write maybe a 100-word summary of a really good instrument for other cancer educators to consider using, and then a really long list of references to support its past use in cancer and the instrument's usefulness for diverse communities. Has it ever been used outside of a white college community?
Right.
Has it been used with Native Americans, so forth? But
Right.
I would find that really helpful, and it might also broaden our authorship's interest in us too.
Yeah, thank you, Georgia. That's a nice topic. I'll reach out to some folks that do evaluation and measurement and outcomes. Thank you. Well, we're getting close to the end of our meeting, and as we come to a close, I wanted to take a few moments to thank you all. This will be my last year serving as editor-in-chief, and it has been a true honor. I want to thank you all because as a team, I think that Ben has showed us that we've been able to contribute meaningful work to the cancer education literature. These last couple years have been difficult, and I thank you all for your support. I know I've had to ask for extra time from you all, and some of the numbers that we see that are good trends for the journal are not from the work that I do alone. It's because I've reached out to you all and you've given me some really great advice. I would like to take a moment not only to thank you all here, but to reach out to the past editors and our current editor and thank you for your insight, encouragement, and really sound advice as I learned about this world. I truly appreciate it. I would also like to say that I think that the journal will be in very good hands with Ben's support, the resources that we have from Springer and you all. I think that our journal and the new editor will be in very good hands. And I thank you all for trusting me with the journal. I hope you all keep well. Thank you for coming.